Thank you, Peggy, and thank you to the folks that put the short course together for inviting me to speak. I have way too many slides to get this done in 20 minutes, so I'm gonna move through them rather quickly, hoping that it's sort of like a little piece of Chick-fil-A. It's like some goody goodness you get, and then, you know, if you don't have time for a sandwich, you'll come back and buy one later, right? So we're gonna move through it pretty quick. I don't want to be played off the stage by the orchestra, so I'm gonna thank some folks up front. Our project team, consisting of Decision Lens experts, ATG Alliance, High Street, and Jimenez and Associates. We had a technical working group all the way through that was comprised of data owners from traffic operations, maintenance, bridge, right-of-way, and then multiple TP&P colleagues who have contributed to this project, whether they knew it or not. And then finally, to my colleagues in statewide, Casey Duza, Laura Perez, and Robert Ramirez, for all of their diligent hard work on the project. So basically, this project was sort of an outgrowth of the Texas Transportation Plan 2040, which was adopted by the department in 2015. As we moved into implementing the plan and performance-based planning and programming, we were looking for a way to bring all this great data. The three gentlemen up here, very hard to follow. You guys, you're experts in your field, and I rely on folks like these guys every day to provide the data that we have. But anyway, we needed a way to pull it together to be able to evaluate and score projects based on 6 goal areas: safety preservation, congestion reduction, enhanced connectivity, effects on economic development, and effects on the environment. You'll see these in several pieces of legislation, you know, with slight variations, but they basically follow the tenets in the FAST Act and previously in MAP 21 and HB 20. So anyway, this tool is enterprise prioritization and resource allocation. What we're trying to do is take the data, get meaningful outcomes from that data to help us make the best project selection and financial decisions. We take a fiscally constrained approach to what we can and can't do within the configuration of the tool. The project is consistent with system performance expectations and model targets, because again, I'll get into this a little bit later, this tool learns. It takes historical data and it's able to learn and let you know from a predictive analysis standpoint how well you did in the past and what the benefits to the system are going to be in the future. So the prioritization methodology is really based on 5 elements. Weight, determine which project benefits are most important to a decision maker's scale, to convert project benefits with respect to various performance metrics into dimensionless units that can be readily compared, or multi-objective decision analysis. Score, to express the project benefits and the relative importance to that decision maker on a dimensionless scale. This is a scale 0.0 to 1.0. Prioritize projects and rank feasible and eligible projects into a list, and then be able to optimize your decisions based strictly on the data, or with you having human input to be able to force fund or add qualitative analysis to your portfolio, and then do a trade-off analysis. So again, I've gone over this a little bit. The way that this slide is different is that we initially started the project with the UTP being our main focus, and we've now branched out to TIP and STIP projects. And again, This is supposed to help drive the decision-making and the investment and resource allocation of the projects that TxDOT and the MPOs and other planning partners choose to fund. You can't see, well, maybe you can. I forgot how big the screen was. These are TxDOT's key performance measures. Again, they basically, like I said, you'll see them in several different places in our documentation, and they might be slightly differently worded, but these are the KPMs that TxDOT is basing their decisions on. We are using some functionality within the tool for consensus analysis on how to create global weights for each of the performance management areas. We have had all of the district engineers and MPO directors or their designees, along with our administration, do a paired comparison within the tool to come up with global weights, which we'll talk about shortly. And again, it's defined by a technical methodology using data sets. And when I say limited at present, it's some limitations, I guess lessons learned were that, projects that are, the problem with any model is that it's predicated on data. So if you decide you're going to build a project, but you don't have any PS&E or a feasibility study, you really don't have any data. And when you try to plug that into a model like this, well, you get a very poor score. And so we're working through the education part of that for the data owners to let them understand that they should not be disappointed if it has a low score. That would be expected if you don't have all of the data for a project that's 10 years out in the UTP. Okay, so here are the technical elements. Basically, I have to change this slide, seems like every 15 minutes. We get project descriptive data from currently DCIS to be at some point migrated to MPPM, grid data, which we were formerly pulling, well, we're still pulling from Rhino, but hoping to get the grid data. Pavement analyst, which was formerly PMIS in our legacy system, and spec tech, which was again legacy data that TxDOT had, well, Pontex from legacy data, and then the CRIS data that we get for our crash analysis data that we get from traffic operations. So basically, TxDOT or the MPOs or anybody within the department, if they can provide a list of projects, preferably with a CSJ, we can take those CSJs. We then put them, they're the user inputs that are run through a preprocessor that feeds that data into Decision Lens through an API, application programming interface, and then comes out with scored and ranked projects. If you don't have CSJ, then we provide templates, and if you have that data, so if you're city or county, you can provide the data that we need from any source and populate the template. And as long as we have geospatial data lat long, we can match that up to these other systems to provide that data. This is the data input. It's actually a screenshot. One of the things that was very important when we went into this process was that we expressed a decision lens that we want the user to be able to click into the data that is uploaded and be able to see each and every data point and be able to check that, see where the null sets are, see where, to actually see each data point that's going into the score. The other thing is we're working through a process where if that data is incorrect, that they are able and they don't have access to the TxDOT databases, we're working through some protocols for them being able to use their data to score projects at the local level. This is also important because we don't want to constrain them to the performance metrics that we have. For instance, one of the MPOs is looking at lifestyle and I guess the various intangibles that qualitative things that go into how our transportation system works, and you can do that in this system. You can add that as a performance area. You can come up with your own sub-criteria. You can roll it up into the score. We've tried to tell them, though, that when we roll it into the statewide, that part of it, that element of it falls off. So they still have the ability to score their projects based on their local weights, their local criteria, and then we're going to roll it up into a statewide score, not to tell anybody that they've picked the wrong projects, but so that we can evaluate the performance of what they have chosen. This is the sensitivity analysis. So very quickly, what happens here, these are the statewide global weights that TxDOT came up with using the paired comparison tool within Decision Lens. So you can see I've blown that up. Those are the weights on each of the performance areas. Each of those percentages determines how much of the sub-criteria that is tied to each of those areas impacts the ultimate score. As you see, there's little locks there. You can lock those down. You can move those sliders around for easy comparison of different scenarios within seconds. It is a model, but it is interesting that you can go in there and you can make changes to that model without having to go back and input data and look at different scenarios within 5 to 10 seconds. It just takes, depending on how many projects you have, takes the tool time to regenerate numbers. So we also have horizontal bar graphs, so at a glance you can visualize how much of each project, how much these performance areas contribute to the score. And basically, if you don't like the way that they're numbered, or you'd like to look at another scenario, all you have to do is do the what-if analysis, and basically that allows you to see how changing criteria or alternative ratings, and in the system, alternatives are actually projects that are synonymous. The inputs will impact the rankings. So from the control panel, you can filter with the sliders. The values can be locked, as I showed you with the lock, and then the owners can save that scenario without creating much of a storage issue, because again, it's using the initially modeled data. And then on the alternatives list, you get a change to the project. So again, I blew this up. I went in and I purposefully changed preservation and safety and locked them down. The system will then take percentages up to 100, and it will allocate them as closely to your global data. In other words, it will take proportionally, add those to the rest of the project, or take them away to give you additional weight on a certain criteria. So basically, I spun those dials. I clicked. I clicked, there's a button, you can't see it there, but it says it's basically a rerun the data, and within about 5 seconds, all of the same projects that were in this portfolio were now re-ranked based on the change of the weight on those performance areas. And right there you see the change column. It will actually tell you on that list of projects, the way they were originally ranked, whether they go up and down that list. And you can do this all day long. It makes it a great tool when you're sitting around trying to reach consensus. When you can force fund projects, it'll also, I'll talk about that in a second, when you're sitting around and you want to know what the consequences are of changing data, or the consequences of changing priorities are, you can look at that in real time. Some of the interesting graphics, this is a bubble chart. If you see, I'm sorry, I've got a rather Magoovian view of everything right now, but over there's the criteria tree. So if you want to look more into that, when you get a copy of this presentation, you'll see exactly what data and how that's weighted. Those sub-criteria are also, what it does is however many criteria, if you have 4 criteria, it's going to be 0.25 rolled up into, say, 34.2% of the score. You can go in and change those manually, because again, we're not telling locals and people outside of TxDOT or the districts what their priorities should be. Because clearly, in a metropolitan area, you're going to be looking at congestion. That's not a problem in the rural areas. Safety and connectivity are, and we totally expect that people will wind the dials up on that to represent what their needs are, and they can totally do that. You can put it on a bubble chart. The interesting thing is here is you can click on a bubble. Your y-axis is your value, your x-axis is the money. And when you click on those bubbles, it will give you the portfolio score. It will give you the rankings. It will also tell you these happen to be all funded, but if there's gray area, as you see in the key, it'll tell you which parts of the project are not funded or how much money you need to be totally funded on your project. And again, the nice thing is that you can set your screen up any way you want. So if you wanted to change the weights on your criteria, sub-criteria, you can do it right there in the tree. If you want to wind the dials on the percentages on the parent criteria, you can do them right on the same screen. Click it again and you'll get another visual. Here's the allocation analysis. This is where you see nothing in there because as of late, the projects we've been asked to score are all fiscally constrained because some decision has been made before it's been given to us. We have X amount of dollars and these are projects we chose for that category. And that is something we're working through because when you bring the tool in at that point, your portfolio is always a 1, right? If you only put in the projects that you had enough money for, then the analytics of the tool are saying, well, you're building exactly the projects you want, irrespective of score. You have all the money to do it, so you're taking care of 100% of your needs. Your portfolio value is 1.0. Here's the portfolio value, what's in and what's out. From a different portfolio that we ran earlier this year. At a glance, you can see what was funded. You can change the scenario. At the top, there's a drop-down menu. So again, we're looking at address congestion. So if you're keying on those projects, you can literally make that your focus, and it will say what's in, what's out based on that being a priority. There's other things in there. Every one of the performance areas is in there as a drop-down, as well as an unconstrained financial analysis, a constrained look by category, many options for you to do that, and the what's in, what's out. So this is sort of what we call the force-funded screen. You see something that's out, and you go, well, we've got to build that. That's a commitment or whatever. You can literally click over in this column and drag it over. And it's basically going to pick the lowest scoring project in what's in, or multiple projects that cover the cost of that, and move them into the what's out. So you see immediately when you bring a project in what you're going to give up on the what's in to be able to cover the funding. Here's the Pareto analysis. I like this table because it's another way to look at, especially when we get questions like, well, we're going to reduce a category of funding by 10%. So you can literally go in here in increments of 10. You can also set it, I just have it set at increments of 10, and it will basically, you see all of your CSJs there on the side, and you say, if you move this category you reduce it by 10%, or add 10% or 20 or all the way up to 50, these projects will be funded or not be funded based on the percentage of that category that makes up the estimated construction cost. Basically, what we've done is to be able to produce maps, I guess for our customers outside the department, to be able to produce maps that come straight out of Decision Lens. Pleth mapping is being used right now. Basically, that was High Street did this, and so you can click on any county, and what you see is a roll-up by county of the money that they're asking for the portfolio. Or you can outline a district and see the district. The alternatives location map, basically, this is just OpenStreetMap. The thing about this is this is the free version. This isn't even the free trial version. So again, it doesn't require that our external customers have any layers, any application, ArcGIS. We're still saying that if you want official text.maps, you need to go through data management. But on the fly, if you're talking to your policy committee, this is a great way to be able to map your projects and pull them up. Again, if you click on those projects, you get a synopsis of what we feel is the most important data out of the tool, including the overall score, and then you have all 6 of the areas, and it tells you exactly by clicking on that what that project got as a score. Okay, so let's see. I'm already out of time, so I'm going to go quickly through the added functionality. As we worked through this, Decision Lens has a dependency screen. It basically worked very simple. If this, then that. If this, not that. And we explained to them we have many more dependencies in our non-attainment areas. We have to do things by phase. So if you want to build an added capacity project in a non-attainment area, we really have if this project, then this right-of-way, these utility adjustments. So basically they're going in and they are adding functionality to have unlimited dependencies. Now again, if you put enough dependencies in there, you're not going to get anything. You're going to paint yourself into a corner. But they are bringing that on in early 2018. So, and that takes us to the project components and phasing. So again, what this will allow you to do is first off take a large project, a mega project if you will, or a corridor, and make components or segments of independent utility dependent upon each other. Phasing, it will also track phasing of the project, right-of-way and things like that, and then not schedule project till you have completed those phases of work. We're also adding in categories of money. So when it's looking at your projects, if your project's overrun and it waterfalls into a certain category, it will push the lowest scored project out in the furthest year, take the money from that, and then reschedule it based on historically what you get in allocation or what you have. You can change any of this manually, but that's what this is designed to do. Again, integrated scheduling. So you can choose an alternative. You can say when it starts and when it ends. Again, this tool is able to learn from the data. So it basically takes in the data for different types of projects. It saves it after we put the letting in. There's a scheduling roadmap. So again, I can't see that up there, but I think what we put in is that this project couldn't start until this project was finished. We just wanted to show a little bit, like I said, we didn't use any Texas data. We don't want to show any preferences or anything like that, but basically the scheduler will schedule when the money's available, when the other components of the project are done or completed, and also if you have like a phased corridor, you can set them up in the scheduler, then put dependencies together, and it will even show you on a map which parts of those segments of independent utility are coming up next, plus whether all of the other phases preceding that are complete and ready to go. And if you miss one phase, it bumps, if you miss it by 2 months, it bumps every other dependency out by 2 months. And over time, it tracks it. So basically, another thing, a problem we had is that when we were working with the commissioners, you have an email, just like a lot of systems, that asks you to sign in and create an account. And that's a little bit problematic on the fly. So we asked them to put in an ad hoc user where if we're sitting in a meeting, we can just add someone right there so they can score and be a user without having to, I think it took Peter and I 3 times, and they were tragic fails for all commissioners because most of them don't use their text.dot accounts, they use their personal accounts. And so, and there you go. So anyway, ad hoc users coming early, 2018. Temporary access that can last for however long the portfolio owner would like it to. And then what we really have that we're looking forward to is the portfolio of portfolios, which takes everybody's portfolio, assigns a color to it. You can either do it by district, and it breaks down those portfolios within the portfolio, and you can look at, you can basically look at the time and resources it takes. Those little lines you see out there are saying historically you think you're going to start or finish this date, but historically for this type of project in this area, this is probably really when it's going to happen. So it helps you do some predictive analysis for your scheduler. It's also going to do program feasibility planning. So again, it's going to take these projects and it's going to take any changes in the funding and make, rework your Gantt chart to let you know when those are more likely to go off. If projects go off, it'll also back them up. If you're underfunded in a category, it'll take the highest scoring project, apply that money to it, and say, hey, you may get to do this one sooner. This is the schedule-based scenario comparison. Again, it's looking at your baseline, basically what you have on the ground. It's looking at your improvement plan, say the tip, and then comparing it to, because we all know that tips and projects are comprised of what's approved, by the decision makers. But then it'll also show you if you let the tool optimize that portfolio of projects, what type of benefit you could get and when you could implement those projects individually. So anyway, the performance-based scenario comparison, this is the output here. So basically it looks at the cost, the risk, the balance of types of project, and it'll rate it for you. So at a glance you can see what your predicted improvement's going to be based on the projects you chose, based on the project the tool would choose, and based on what you had originally. And you get the little up and down percentages, sort of like the NASDAQ. I told them, I said, please do not put anything in there that says congestion's going to improve. I said, you don't have to say it's going to go negative 24, but we're struggling with putting data in and realizing that sometimes we're concentrating on performance areas that we really can't make a substantive improvement in. So I said, please show realistically, what this would look like. We're just the elves. Basically, we're not the data owners in statewide. We depend on data owners. We depend on how much they care about their data, the veracity and the reliability of it. We're just it just so happens this is going to come out, fully roll out end of October and be fully implemented at Christmas. I love the movie Elf. I think it's an apt analogy. We're just a happy group of people trying to build tools or toys, if you will, and deliver them. They're not things that we're going to own. We are taking all types of input into consideration. When we talk to the architects of these tools, it's not based on what anybody necessarily in statewide wants. And we did collect a lot of comments from our technical working committee, the other divisions. We have, by trial and error, learned a lot of our limitations. And then when we trained 128 initial users from February to March of this year, they all told us what they thought. So all of that was rolled up into changes that have already been implemented and configured in the tool, and then the ones that were heavier lifts, like the dependencies and the algorithms that need to be written, those are coming in 2018. So anyway, upcoming events, you'll receive information on Go Live and training October 23rd. The actual Go Live for the districts, MPOs, and COG users, and I will say RMAs, is October 26th, plus or minus, we are TxDOT. And super user, new user, refresher training will begin in early November as we can get the training rooms booked, and we'll let you know on October 23rd. Requests for access to the tools, you can email myself, Casey Duza, or Robert Ramirez. So thank you again for went over by 10 minutes. Sorry, it's a lot of data to have to present in 20 minutes, but I appreciate you staying and not walking out on me. And the ones of you that did, you're not here, so